records custodian with the subpart 92A. I believe it comes in by way of stipulation.
That is correct, Judge.
All right, 92 and 92A are both admitted.
Detective, what is State's Exhibit 92A?
92A is a folio bill from the residents in Kansas City Airport, located in Kansas City, Missouri.
And what was significant about this document to you?
This was the location of the IP address that was given on Tylee's cell phone on that date.
Okay. And does this document identify any individual for renting a room?
Yes. The room was purchased by Melanie Boudreau, who is Lori Vallow's niece.
All right. And do you know if anyone else was with her?
We know that Lori traveled to Kansas City with Melanie on this date. They flew from Phoenix to Missouri on the 10th and returned to Phoenix on the 12th. And we can confirm that with the airline reservations.
All right. And what was significant about that trip to you in your investigation?
That Lori was in Missouri using Tylee's phone and Tylee wasn't there.
Okay. Were you able to verify through flight records where they flew from?
I did.
Where did they fly from? Bailiff? Where did they fly from?
They flew from Phoenix to Missouri, according to the flight records.
And so on that folio, it only stated the two people.
The two people, yes.
So there was no Tylee Ryan on that folio,
No. And
and
it
no
shows,
JJ Vallow.
no, and it shows that the room was paid for by Melanie.
Okay. Detective, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. As part of your investigation, did you ever engage in any type of search for pharmaceutical records?
Yes.
What type of search did you do?
In cases such as missing persons, we'll reach out if we have an idea of where the person we were looking for is living or has lived, and we will reach out to the state as a resource to the state pharmaceutical board and request if any prescriptions were filled that may lead us to a location that or an area that they may be in.
And did you do that for, who did you do a search for?
I did a search for JJ. I did a search for Tylee. There was one we searched for Melanie Boudreau as well, and also Lori.
And how do you go about doing a search for pharmaceutical records?
We'll reach out to the pharmaceutical board in the state and submit a request and let them know the circumstances, and they will then submit the information to you.
All right. And does each state do that the same?
Same premise, but they're all a little bit different. But we reached out to the state of Arizona, the state of Montana, and state of Hawaii, and the state of Idaho.
Why Montana?
Well, early on, as this case was unfolding at the very beginning, we were receiving tips, and one of the tips called in. They thought maybe JJ and Tylee were being held in a compound in Montana somewhere. So we just called upon that to check on that.
Right.
And also that Melanie Boudreau at the time was living directly next door in apartment 174. So that's why her name was run as well.
Detective, can you look at State's Exhibit 94 and 94A? Your Honor, State's Exhibit 94 is a records, affidavit of records custodian. And I believe that this document comes in by way of stipulation.
That's correct, Judge.
All right, exhibit 95 and 95A, both admitted.
And Detective, if you'll look at 95A, when you submitted names to these states, did you just do one name or multiple names?
We did multiple names. We knew that when we were looking through the airline records, JJ would fly under the name of Ryan, or he'd fly under the name Vallow. So we just, we would use both last names when we were searching. Researching for this. type
So
of
what was the
stuff.
name you searched for on this page?
JJ Ryan,
And here?
Joshua Jackson Vallow,
Here?
Joshua Jackson Ryan,
Here?
Melanie Boudreau,
On this page?
Melanie Pulowski. This would be Melanie Boudreau's current last name. She had remarried in November of 2019.
And here?
And the last here is Tyler Ryan.
Did you ever find records of Tyler Ryan traveling under a different name?
Only once, and that was on a trip to Hawaii in early 2019. She flew under Tyler Vallow one way and returned Tyler Ryan in a different on the return leg.
And Detective, excuse me, you perform that search in Idaho?
I did not. Another detective did, but the search was performed.
And are you aware if any results came in from that search?
There were no results.
All right. And any results from Arizona?
No results from Arizona, although they live down there. I was educated that Arizona only keeps track of narcotic analgesics or painkillers, opiate based drugs. That's all they keep track of. They don't do anything for any other types of medications.
Detective, can you look at State's Exhibit 96? In Your Honor, 96 is an affidavit of a records custodian. And it has one subpart A.
Any objection to 96 and 96A being admitted?
No, Judge, thank you.
Very well, both are admitted.
Detective, can you look at State's Exhibit 96A? That is. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
Did you obtain that document?
I did.
And what is it?
This is an email exchange that Lori Vallow sent to Michael Edson. It's a little blurry on my screen here. If that's a way I don't have a copy in my possession. Okay, there you go.
Is that better?
Yes. This is an email sent from Lori Vallow to Mike Edson. We learned that it was a tax accountant that did Lori and Charles' taxes. And she sent an email to him asking if you'd like me to read the body, I could.
So it looks to me, Detective, like there's two emails. Can you tell which email was sent first?
I want to clarify exhibits here, Mr. Wood. Which exhibit is this being published right now?
That would be 96A.
All right. My 96A courtesy copy is the subpoena, but not the email.
Wait, can I approach?
You may. I'll just have the bailiff provide you a copy of my courtesy copy. And if I don't, it's fine.
You're correct. Oh, well, all right, strike. What I have is consistent with what you have.
Okay, you can go ahead and publish it, Mr. Wood. It's been admitted, and it's fine if my courtesy copy is not containing that as well.
And Your Honor, we'll correct that after court.
Thank you.
Detective, all right, who's that email from again?
Michael Edson.
And are you aware of who Michael Edson is?
Yes, he was a tax accountant for Lori and Charles Vallow.
All right. And can you read the body of that email?
So the first email was sent by Lori on September 9th. It says, "Hi, Mike. This is Lori Vallow. I'm not sure if you heard, but Charles passed away in July. It's been a pretty stressful couple of months. I saw online our tax return got sent out, but it went to an old address. I moved with the kids and forwarded the mail, but I'm not sure that they will forward the tax return check. Is there some way to contact them to cancel that check and do a direct deposit? Or how would that work? Let me know when you can. Thanks, Lori."
Did he respond?
He did.
How did he respond?
He responded by email. Lori sent her email at 5:03 PM and he responds the same date at 6:11 PM. Says, "Lori, I'm sorry to hear about Charles. I really thought he was a great guy. If there's anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask." In the interim, here is the link to the IRS to fill out a change of address form so they can send you the check up to the new address. Prayers with you, Mike.
Detective, why was this email exchange significant to your investigation?
Well, the email itself is rather benign. It's just appears to be a classic back and forth of exchanging information, but the date on the email is what was important to us, being September 9th. We recall our last known sighting of proof of life of Tylee was September 8th and the September 9th. So we believe the investigation has found that Tylee was no longer living at the time of this email.
Okay. And was it significant to you that was just one day after her last known sighting?
Yes.
Detective, can you look at State's Exhibit 98? And Your Honor, 98 is a certificate of authenticity with one subpart 98A. I believe it comes in by way of stipulation.
Very well. 98 and 98A are both admitted.
Detective, can you look at State's Exhibit 98A? And can you describe what it is?
98A is airline information that we received via search warrant for 2 American airlines. We requested several names in the warrant to see if we could find out whether or not Tylee or JJ were on a plane somewhere during our search for them.
And these are the American airline records.
Correct.
And did you find any history of Tylee Ryan or JJ Vallow or Lori Vallow on these documents?
There were several flights for Lori during the period of time we requested from January 1st of 2019 through 2020. And there was only 2 flights that were listed for Tylee, and one was in February and one was in March, and they were both round trips to Hawaii. But there were no flights for JJ.
So, no, I'm sorry, did you say no flights for JJ?
No flights for JJ on American Airlines.
And what was the time frame in which you asked for these records?
January 1st of 2019 through the end of the year.
And do you recall why that was?
Well, we knew that they had moved up to Idaho in September, but we wanted to see if there was any regular places that they went to or visited that we may reach out to another agency or something to try to find and locate JJ and Tylee.
All right. And so to clarify, you stated you found 2 flights for Tylee Ryan to Hawaii
Yes,
and multiple flights for Lori Vallow.
correct. And also Chad Daybell.
Oh, okay. And what of those flights of Lori Vallow are of interest to your investigation?
Well, the biggest one was in around time of that Tammy Daybell was killed.
Grounds. Sustain.
Um,
I'll strike just the last part of the response saying Tammy was killed.
all right. Are you aware of what day Tammy Daybell died?
Yes, it was the 19th of October, 2019.
All right. And so one of these flights of Lori Vallow coincided with that death. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And there was another flight as well that was in and around that time that was pertinent to us.
And what flight was that?
That was the flight in early November where Chad and Lori flew to Hawaii to get married. They were married on November 5th and they flew out on the 3rd of November.
And that was on these American Airlines documents.
Correct.
Okay. Detective, can you look at State's Exhibit 100? Your Honor, State's Exhibit 100 is a business records affidavit with one subpart A. I believe it comes in by way of stipulation.
Any objection to the admission of 100 or 100A? All right, both are admitted.
Detective, State's Exhibit 100, what is it?
It is business records affidavit for Southwest Airlines.
And what is 100A?
This are airline information reservations for Southwest Air.
And did you find anything in these records that were pertinent to your investigation?
We found that Lori and Charles traveled on this airline through 2019, and we learned that JJ had flown 6 times, but that was all prior to them moving to Idaho.
Okay. And do you know what those flights were?
They were flights from Phoenix to Houston, where Charles Vallow lived at the time, and JJ would fly back and forth between Phoenix and Houston to visit.
Okay. And did you find any other records on Southwest Airlines that were pertinent to your investigation?
Just give me a moment. I'm not seeing anything for Southwest Air.
Primarily those flights for JJ Vallow.
Correct.
Did you find any flights for Tylee Ryan on Southwest?
I don't believe we did.
Detective, do you have State's Exhibit 99? And again, Your Honor, State's Exhibit 99 is a business records declaration with one subpart A.
I do not have that.
Your Honor, may the witness be handed a copy.
All right, I don't believe the court has a courtesy copy of that one either.
Can I ask counsel? Okay,
You can still,
I guess, can you show it to counsel in the court and then?
I'll just do some light reading, Judge.
very well.
Judge, can counsel and I approach just briefly?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, what were those dates?
Dates were for April 26th through the 29th of 2019.
And Detective, do you have State's Exhibit 305A? And 305? And Your Honor, 305 is a certification of records. I believe this comes in by way of stipulation with one part, 305A.
That's correct, Judge.
All right, both 305 and 305A are admitted.
Detective, do you recognize State's Exhibit 305A?
Yes, this is airline reservation information from United Airlines.
And who is it for and what does this document tell you?
This document tells me that the passenger on the reservation is for Chad Daybell.
And does this coincide with the last document you looked at in time?
Yes,
And does it say who purchased the flight?
this flight was purchased by Lori Vallow through her BBVA account.
But the person flying was Mr. Daybell.
Correct.
Detective, we've talked a lot about finances and travel. Looking at, is it fair to say you've reviewed several travel records pertaining to individuals involved in this case?
Yes,
And did you have to look at a large amount of documents to do so?
yes,
Detective, in aid of the jury understanding the travel dates that are important to your investigation, did you prepare a timeline that shows the travel of the different parties?
yes.
And what records did you use to create that timeline?
We used airline records from Allegiant, Delta, American, United.
And did you prepare that document in aid of your testimony today?
Yes,
Do you believe it would aid the jury in understanding the dates
yes,
and the places traveled to?
yes.
Detective, can you look at State's Exhibit 303? Detective, is this that document that you prepared in aid of the jury?
Yes,
Is it a true and accurate representation of what you prepared?
yes,
Your Honor, for demonstrative purposes, the state would move to admit Exhibit 303 into the record.
For demonstrative purposes, there's no objection, Judge.
All right, Exhibit 303 is admitted.
Detective, I'm going to turn your attention to the first page of 303. And can you walk the jury through this timeline?
sure. This is a travel timeline for Chad and Lori Daybell. This first box on top of the timeline right before January shows that Chad and Lori met on the 26th of October in 2018. So this starts in January of 2019. So in January, on the 6th through the 10th, Chad Daybell flies round trip from Idaho Falls to Phoenix, and the flight was booked in December of 2018 by Mr. Daybell using the Chad Daybell Gmail address, the same one he used for the Kauai Dreams Realty. As we move to March, we see that Lori Vallow booked a round trip flight from Phoenix Mesa to Idaho Falls, but she canceled this flight on the 26th for unknown reasons. But she ended up booking a flight and flew to Hawaii for this time frame. In the middle to late March, on the 19th through the 21st, Chad Daybell flew from round trip from Idaho Falls to Phoenix Mesa. And the flight was booked on the 13th of March, 2019 by Lori Vallow. And this is her Lolly Time Forever at iCloud email associated with that account. In April, Lori flies one way from Phoenix Mesa to Idaho Falls. The flight was booked on the 29th, so it was fairly quick. And then she flies one way back to, on the next one up here, she flies back from Idaho Falls to Phoenix. And that was booked on the 3rd of April. Again, and she booked her flight. On April 26th, this is the one we just talked about. Chad flew round trip from Idaho Falls to Houston, Texas, with a stop in Denver. It was booked by Lori Vallow and paid for by her BBVA bank account. Mr. Daybell did use his Spring Creek credit card to pay for an extra baggage for the flight. As we move over into May, we see Lori flew one way from Phoenix Mesa to Provo, Utah, and the flight was booked by Lori. And then up here we have the date of July 11th, 2019. That's the day that Charles Vallow died.
Can you walk the jury through the second page of that timeline?
Okay.
Try and zoom in a little bit.
One thing I want you to take notice of, if you could please, is that after Charles Vallow dies, Lori flies under the name of Lori Ryan the rest of the year. I think she booked a flight a day or so after Charles died, but still used the name Vallow, but everything else is Lori Ryan. So in August, you see up here the timeline, they're moving to Idaho. And then late August, Lori flies up a round trip from Phoenix Mesa to Idaho Falls, and she books her flight. And Melanie Boudreau, and that's Lori's niece, she was also on this trip. We believe that this is the signing of the rental lease just prior to them moving up. You see here on the timeline as we go on September 8th, it's the last known sighting of Tylee Ryan. We move over to the 22nd. That's our last known sighting of JJ. So in October 8th through the 13th, Lori Ryan flies a round trip from Idaho Falls to Phoenix Mesa. And this is the trip where she took to Missouri, which we had the Venmo used from the Missouri hotel. What's significant about this date is this is the day before Tammy Daybell had an incident where she was shot at and reported to police.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point at the characterization.
I'll sustain it as to that final statement and strike that part of the witness response. Mr. Wood, if you'd ask another question, I believe we're just getting into a total narrative at this point as well.
I understand it, Your Honor. After October 9th, what was the next event that took place?
Lori flies round trip from Las Vegas to Kauai. The date of the 17th of October is just before Tammy Daybell was found dead on the 19th. She was scheduled to return on the 21st on this flight. As you move over to the 24th of October, she flies one way from Phoenix to Idaho Falls after flying back from Hawaii. Now down here we have on the 23rd, just to give you a sense of where on the timeline things falls, that Tammy Daybell had her funeral service in Rexburg on the 23rd. As we move to early November, Chad and Lori fly round trip from Salt Lake City to Kauai. Chad flies from Salt Lake City. Lori, we believe, drove a vehicle down to Arizona and then met up with Chad in Southern California. There was a family trip that Chad took with his kids to California during this time. And But what was significant to us is that Chad booked this flight just 5 days after the funeral service for Tammy Daybell. Continuing,
Well, Detective, I actually want to ask you a question. Um,
Mr.
All
Wood,
right.
I'd like to take a look at the time as well. I don't know how much longer you've got on the timeline, but
you got one more page, Your Honor?
okay, let's do
And-
that and then we'll take lunch.
Okay. Detective, this last box, you'll see my pen pointing at, that's marked 11/3/2019. Does that coincide at all with what your investigation shows about the marriage of Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow?
yes, they departed for Hawaii and were married in Hawaii on the 5th of November.
And then one last page. Detective, what's marked in the first two boxes?
So we have here Lori and Chad flew one way from Hawaii to Phoenix. And below that, they arrived in Idaho Falls on Allegiant Airlines. On the 28th, Chad flew one way from Salt Lake. And again, I believe I may have mixed up on the last page, but Lori was scheduled to be on this flight, but we believe she drove her car to Arizona. His box on the reservation was marked flown and hers was left empty, so it was designated to open. So, and this was also a trip that was a family trip that Chad paid for his kids and their spouses to fly to California to have over the Thanksgiving holiday. There was no record of Tylee or JJ on this trip at all.
Now, Detective, you had mentioned a trip earlier. Is it possible that this was the trip you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last box.
The last box is Chad and Lori flew one way from LAX to Hawaii where they took up residence.
Okay.
The
And then
last, I'm sorry, then the
there is-
last
Yes, there's one more box. Can you,
box on the top of the timeline is June 9th, and that's when we found JJ and Tylee.
all right. Your Honor, I believe now would be time to break.
Okay, we will go ahead and take the lunch recess at this time. We'll plan on that being right around an hour. So just shortly after 1 o'clock, we'll try to get started again, go through the afternoon with another break then.